Question. Can you or Mother Mary tell us more about Mother Mary's ascension? Like she and Jesus ascended in that same life. So I feel she had almost as public a journey as Jesus. Heck, even more maybe. I mean, imagine being Jesus' mom, and I do, which is where my question comes from. Like they were in the same lifetime in which both ascended. We know in detail, to whatever level we can know, why Jesus did. I feel like, or I'm realizing that, I've always just been assuming, based on my imagination, based on her historical journey and my experiences. I don't think I've ever heard the real reason, or maybe I have. Either way, I'd like to hear it. Thanks. Well, so the first thing I would like to comment on here is this statement. Imagine being Jesus' mom. And I understand it. It's very understandable that you look at Christianity today, what we have been indoctrinated with about Jesus. And 17 centuries, starting with the Catholic Church, of this idolizing Jesus, putting him up on a pedestal as the only Son of God. Right? So with this overlay, you are looking back and thinking, oh, Jesus must have been so special. I mean, I met many Christians who think that, they believe in these images. You see that Jesus is walking around there in the dusty deserts, but his clothing was always clean and no dust. His hair was perfectly combed, and he had this halo of light around him. So they are thinking, oh, Jesus was so special, and everybody realized he was so special. But if you actually look at the scriptures, very, very few people recognize Jesus as being anything special when he was in a physical body. Most people either ignored him flat out or denied that he was the Messiah. They even, for God's sake, killed him and crucified him. So we have to first look at what we want to call it, the perception gap between how we have been indoctrinated to look at Jesus and how they actually looked at Jesus back then. Because, Jesus wasn't, by most people, seen as anything special. And he didn't really see himself as being that special either, even though he was aware he had a mission. But you have to realize that Jesus' self-image 2,000 years ago was very, very different from the image that modern Christians have of Jesus. Fundamentally different. There was not the idolatry in Jesus' own mind. And there wasn't in Mother Mary's mind either. Mother Mary has told in various dictations, both through me and through the Summit Lighthouse, that she had a clear sense that Jesus was a special child and that he had a mission. But it was not like we see it today at all. So mainly her primary role was to hold what she has called the Immaculate Concept. It's kind of playing on the Immaculate Conception, but you are holding the Immaculate image, mental image, of that Jesus would fulfill his mission. Because Jesus was, in his own image, focused on, he had a very specific mission that he saw himself, or at least he came to as he grew older. I'm not saying he was born with it, but he came to see that he had a mission. And Mother Mary had that sense also, and gradually over time that it all became more and more clear. And she has actually explained that that throughout his life, Jesus was actually a very difficult child when he was younger. And he didn't follow the norm. You will see, for example, that if you look at the scriptures, there's a scene where his parents takes him to the temple when he's 12 years old. And he amazes the people in the temple by his knowledge and understanding. Then you don't hear anything more until he suddenly shows up at the age of 30 and begins his public mission in Israel. So there's a gap of 17 missing years. The lost years of Jesus, as it's sometimes called. There's in a book by Elizabeth Care Prophet, called The Lost Years of Jesus, where she talks about it. And it's understood in spiritual teachings that he traveled in the East. He went with some caravans and traveled around, studied various spiritual teachings. There are some even historical records that he spent time in Kashmir and that he studied Buddhism and this and that. So there's reality to this, but just think about this, the culture here. You're brought up in this very localized society, as most societies were back then, and you're supposed to follow in your father's footsteps. His father was supposedly a carpenter, so the normal thing would have been that Jesus would have been an apprentice of his father as a carpenter. But here he decides at the age of 12, oh, I'm going to leave home. I'm going to go out and travel the world. And it must have taken quite a lot of courage from his parents to allow this, to agree to this, because he could have died, all kinds of things could have happened. But he had a strong sense that he needed to do this, and Mother Mary had the immaculate vision that this was part of his life plan, and therefore she could allow him to do it. And then you can see also that you have the wedding in Cana, where the story is that they're at this wedding, and they run out of wine. And Mother Mary has to nudge Jesus to use his ability to turn water into wine, in other words, his mastery of mind over matter that he had acquired during those 17 years. And so this is again part of her holding the Immaculate Concept and at a certain time stepping in. And she obviously did that many more times than it's recorded in the scriptures. So she was there, kind of in the background, but at certain times she helped him take the next step on his path. And in the very end, she was actually there at the foot of the cross when he was hanging there on the cross. And both Jesus and Mother Mary have explained that this was actually a crucial initiation for Jesus. Now, Christians, of course, will think, oh, he was already perfect, so he didn't have to go through any initiation. But you see, the wedding in Cana was a test, an initiation. Would he change the water into wine and therefore start his public mission? Would he do some of the other, everything he did that was unusual, his so-called miracles, even his teachings, it was a test for him. It required him to overcome something in himself. So here you have, he's hanging on the cross. He actually had in his outer mind that God would save him from dying on the cross. He even said, think ye not that I couldn't command legions of angels to come and basically save him. But then he realizes, and this is what Mother Mary is standing there at the base of the cross looking at him. She's holding the Immaculate Concept that he'll pass his test, because he realizes, no, he actually has to die on the cross. His physical body has to die on the cross. And in order to do this, he has to give up the ghost, which is one of what I call these separate selves, the subconscious selves that we have. A certain image of what should or shouldn't happen to him. And he maintained that self that thought, oh, God is going to save me from dying on the cross. And he had to give up that self. And that is how he qualified for his ascension. And so, back to the question and Mother Mary's ascension. How did she qualify for her ascension? Well, the same way. By giving up her sense of herself, her subconscious selves, of what should or shouldn't happen to Jesus. She had to, time and time again, give up something in some of her ideas of what should or shouldn't happen to Jesus and hold that Immaculate Concept. And holding the Immaculate Concept, understand, you have a vision of the ideal outcome, but you're not trying to force it upon the other person. You are giving that person totally free will. And that requires you to give up your own sense of what should or shouldn't happen, these selves that I'm talking about. So this is mainly how Mother Mary qualified for her ascension in this lifetime. Now, Mother Mary, before that lifetime, had acquired a very high level of consciousness, and you can debate whether she had actually qualified for her ascension before that lifetime and chose to postpone her ascension in order to help Jesus. I can't remember if that has ever been stated directly, but my sense of it is that she could actually have ascended, but she chose to delay it in order to help Jesus with his mission. And so naturally, after Jesus had fulfilled his mission, there wasn't any reason for Mother Mary to stay in embodiment, and therefore she ascended when her natural lifespan of her body ran out. So basically, if we go back to the question, it's natural, it's unavoidable that we look back at Jesus and Mother Mary with this overlay of idolatry that has been put upon them by the Christian churches for 1700 years. But if we are spiritual people, we really need to let go of it. And, the Masters have given a lot of teachings on that. If you look at my website, askrealjesus.com, there's a lot of material there about this. There is also ascendedmasterlight.com, where you can find a number of dictations about Mother Mary, and there are some of them where she talks about her life with Jesus, and you can search on that and find that. So, but the important thing here is to realize that it just wasn't. They didn't see themselves, they didn't look at themselves in their lifetime the way we look at it, based on all of this, to be honest, brainwashing from the mainstream Christian churches. They have created such a veil of idolatry around Jesus and Mother Mary that it's completely out of touch with reality. And for us as spiritual people, it's important to understand that, because, as I've said before, Jesus was meant to be an example who came at the beginning of the age of Pisces to set an example that we all have the potential to manifest this personal Christhood and express this Christhood. And he wanted thousands and millions of people to express their Christhood at the end of the Piscean age and as we're going into Aquarius. And that's really the whole point for his mission. It wasn't about glorifying himself as the only Son of God. It was raising up a lot of other people to accept that we are all sons and daughters of God when we let go of the ego and manifest personal Christhood.